Now to what should be, I believe, the biggest issue in this country, not the voice, and that's Australia's energy market operator that today, it's the top story of the day, is forecasting increased risks of power outages when? Not in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years' time, this summer. And even Climate Change and Energy Minister Chris Bowen, the bloke who should be taking a lot of the responsibility for this mess, well, he's admitted the Albanese government is aware of the risks. He even claimed that they are supposedly preparing for them. Now, I wonder how. By vandalising more of our pristine farming country, I suspect, with weather-dependent solar farms. I saw one off the Hume Highway the other week that was just ugly. You would not believe it. Joining me to discuss the latest on this front is energy expert and market analyst Saul Kavonic. Saul, good to catch up with you again. I pick up the Australian newspaper this morning, dire warning, blackouts this summer, and I think to myself, well, why is anyone surprised? Is AEMO saying that is going to happen, or are they saying that to try and encourage more green investment into the market, do you think?
Well, what I think we're seeing here is finally a bit of a dose of reality from the regulator and acknowledging that the reckoning is here. This is no longer a case of an energy crisis is something that might happen in a hypothetical future next decade. It is here now, and in particular, it becomes a much more acute risk in 2025. And let's make no mistake about it, this AEMO report is about one thing, and that is it is laying the groundwork for more government intervention in energy. And in particular, it's starting to provide political cover for Labor to start subsidising coal-fired power generation. And the reason is it is almost inevitable now that Eraring will have to be extended beyond 2025. What is made very clear is we simply cannot let Eraring go offline before the Central West Renewable Energy Zone and its associated infrastructure comes online. That renewable energy zone has already been delayed from 2025 to 2027, but I will eat my hat if it even comes online this decade. It is hard enough to get big projects like this up in the private sector, let alone when you've got the layers of government bureaucracy and lethargy also involved in the process. And that means Eraring has to stay on longer. I think the one thing we're just waiting for now is we're waiting for Labor to find a way to break the news that they're going to subsidise coal to their green support base. And as soon as they figured a way to spin that, that announcement's going to come out because the reckoning is here. And you've seen it in the AEMO report where for the first time, all we've heard for the last years is about this optimistic green future. This one, they've led with a much more conservative base case, and it's highlighting risks this summer, but all the way through to the end of the decade. There's a reason they're highlighting these risks now. It's because it's too late to be hoping that some plans come to fruition. We need to actually see drastic action to avoid an energy crisis, not just this summer, but particularly in the years from 2025 to 2027.
So we've seen the renewable campaign, which has been extremely strong over the last 10 years, really scare investors out of investing in coal. Even, the owners of these coal-fired power stations, saying, oh, we're going to shut them down, we can't make money out of them. I saw Matt Canavan on with Caleb Bond in the last hour saying, a coal-fired power station is basically a machine, and if you let it get old, it becomes unreliable. Have we crossed a line where the existing assets we have, particularly in Victoria and New South Wales, are too old for purpose, and we're going to get caught with no renewables up and running into the system and these old coal-fired power stations breaking down, causing these blackouts?
Well, that is the other big feature that comes out in this report is increased risk of, essentially the unreliability of our coal-fired power generators. And, people tend to say, well, that's the fault of coal, but it's really the fault of policy, which has seen a lack of investment in coal and a lack of investment in alternatives going back over a decade. It's very hard to separate the politics of this from the market elements of this, of course. What we've seen is the government intervention, which has crowded out and deterred investment, but not enough government intervention that's actually fixed the problem. And, if you look at what's happening now, Labor now have to own this because their interventions and their targets set up over the last 6 to 12 months has helps exacerbate the problem. And if you look at polling on this, which is quite interesting, cost of living and particularly energy costs is a huge issue, but this time it's different where the public is tending not to actually be blaming the energy companies, but it's sitting with the government. And that's why the government's really going to have to own this, which is why if we do see an energy security event coming out in the next few years, it is going to be the Chris Bowen blackouts. It is going to be owned by this government. And that's why we've seen, I think, an about face here, because the government is really worried that something's going to go wrong on their watch ahead of the next election. And now some of the green targets and aspirations are going out of the window to address the very near-term realities that we have to address right now.
You mentioned Bowen. Every time I see him open his mouth, I think I'm probably going to end up in a blackout. Here he is today talking about the AEMO report.
It means we have a lot of catching up to do, but that catching up has begun and will continue. There are some in politics who call for a pause in renewable energy investment, who say we've got time. They're wrong. They've always been wrong. They've caused 10 years of denial and delay already, and they're still trying to get in the way. And we won't be distracted. We'll continue to get on with the job.
I'm not sure how blaming the other mob's going to help. What's he going to do?
Well, there's hard realities here that the rollout, particularly of infrastructure and storage, is simply not going to be there on time for the current scheduled closure of Eraring and, frankly, some other coal-powered stations as well. And, I don't disagree that we need to be rolling out probably much as generation as we possibly can, including dispatchable green energy. But there's certain realities about how logistically long that's going to take. It's not going to be there in time. And in the meantime, all we've got is gas and coal. Gas is a huge problem now. The capacity, the AEMO report highlights it. Gas capacity is now at huge risk in the wake of the government interventions over the last 6 months, which then leaves you back on coal. That's why I said it is inevitable that Eraring has to be extended. The government's going to have to find a narrative which allows them to do it. But there's just simply no way we can have Eraring come off before that green infrastructure comes online without having much higher, or almost certainly higher price volatility, which is likely to result in higher prices overall, and the risk of energy security events or blackouts, as they're more commonly termed.
Saul Kavonic, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you very much for your time tonight.